welcome to week 4 of June's Thursday Nighter. We are very lucky to have International Master Nubair back commentating. Welcome, Nubair.
Thank you, Chris. Hello, everyone, guys.
And like usual, we're going to start with some announcements and a player profile, and then we'll get into the games. So we do have one big announcement, especially for the audience of the Thursday Nighter as well as the players. We have a new tournament Nathan is organizing called the Tuesday Nighter. So Tuesday Nighter is going to be very similar to the Thursday Nighter as far as the time, the days per month. It's just we play as many Tuesdays as there are in the month, just like Thursday Nighter, although they're totally separate events. And the only big difference is it's 60 plus 30 instead of 90 plus 30. So get your games done a little bit early if you prefer not to stay up so late. And there is going to be a discount if you decide to, if you're a chessaholic and you can't get enough classical chess, if you play in both events, you're going to get a $10 discount. So keep in mind that new event, and let's try to get some good participation in that and show Nathan that it's going to be a successful event on Tuesdays. So I never know. I got to talk to Nathan about it, but maybe we can get some broadcast coverage related to the games if we can get the DGT boards rolling on Tuesdays as well. We'll see. So more to come on that, and I'll probably make additional announcements after I discuss it more with Nathan. All right.
Sure. Yeah.
One more announcement here, player of the week. So just going to do the player profile here quick. So our profile player is National Master Thomas Babcock.
Mhm.
So first here, we got one of his wins of the Thursday Nighter. Actually, the last one I played in. And he co-won that with Connor Weatherly. So Thomas definitely, in the hunt to be winning any given Thursday Nighter. And I want to profile some of his best wins because, he's definitely played some of Minnesota's best players, especially kind of our older legacy players. And some of his best wins include Leonard Johnson, Edward Zelkine, Thomas Britt, Kurt Braskett, and Nathan Hoover. So all, especially names like Kurt Braskett and Edward Zelkine, anyone who's been playing chess for a long, long time in Minnesota would definitely recognize those names. And some of his best draws include James Hove, many-time state champion, international master Sean Nagel, Edward Zelkine again, and legend when I was a kid, Victor Adler. So Victor Adler's international master who would win the state championship whenever I would play in it as a kid, and he kind of fought with John Bartholomew over Minnesota state championships a long time ago. So he really some nice results against Minnesota's best legacy players. So cool to see Thomas participating in our Thursday events. Always good to see him playing. And with that, we're going to jump into Thomas's game to start.
Yeah. That's really impressive. I mean, a wins against International Master and a draw against, the famous player or the best players from Minnesota. I think that's quite impressive. Let's see how he's doing today. So he started the game with e4. He's playing Robert. So it's going to be an interesting game. We already have Sicilian on the board. And open Sicilian, most welcome. e5, going into the Pelican.
Yeah, what? That's a funny move order because it's like a Kalashnikov, but then they just decided to transpose the Sveshnikov anyways.
Yeah, they just played the move order they wanted, like the Robert does always. And he goes bishop c5, not interested in d6 lines. No more theoretical lines going into this. So he just goes bishop c5, allowing knight d6 check. And he's not afraid of playing king e7 either. Knight f5, king goes back. And now bishop goes to g5. Knight d4. And now this knight is under attack. So he defends. And simply aiming for knight to d5. And he gets b5. Not really a pawn sacrifice, because if you capture it twice, then you will lose a piece because queen f5 check is coming there. And it would be a problem. So he goes bishop f6. Probably the idea is if he goes queen f6, he just wants to get a pawn. But even after queen f6, he didn't go for knight takes b5. That's a bit surprising. Maybe he was afraid of takes, and some kind of a queen b6. And after you move the bishop, maybe some kind of a queen b2 or bishop takes e3 is a problem. But however, I thought maybe it's possible to play like this. And we have got this queen d3 defending this knight as for the moment. And okay, right now we do not have knight d5 idea because the king is not on e8 anymore. So queen b5, knight c7 is a typical idea. So maybe white has to give up a pawn there. Okay, he can try this, but I will. It's probably possible, but at the same time risky because you're allowing takes and bishop e3, capture queen e3. So just maybe coming back is good idea. And the idea here is to make a double attack. Right now, black can definitely capture queen b2 because there's a queen a1 check, but still it remains complicated as after queen a1, king e2, black is just losing a queen as it's a checkmate threat. So there were some possibilities like this.
One question there. I mean, could we just castle instead of playing queen d5 and say,
Yes, but I thought then we have got queen d4.
okay.
And maybe white is still better, but at least black, we are not forcing black to resign. But in this line, probably, I mean, there's just no way to defend the f7. Maybe we have to move the king somewhere or like this. And then I thought maybe, castle and still we have this double threat. So probably it was possible to play like queen d3 because in reality the black king is weak, but instead, I mean, there's no need to, I mean, capture this. Black can play even this directly, but then you have got knight d5, or black can try some other move like bishop to b7, preventing some knight d5 ideas. But in the game, Thomas just went knight d5 and wants to keep it simple.
Well, I got an explanation for that. I can see he knows who he's playing. He knows he's playing Robert, and
Mm-hmm.
Robert doesn't care about his own king safety usually that much, and he also doesn't care about material. So, he knows he's going to get his material at some point in this game. So I feel like
For sure.
he feels no need to grab a pawn. He's gonna go for piece activity at all costs, and especially like he wants to probably get his pieces towards that king, knowing Robert's gonna just go for his king, and maybe he'll get a good chance to get a mating attack. But so I can see the practical merits of just like I'm not pawn grabbing, I don't care.
Yeah, definitely. It makes sense. Why to give any chance to opponent who likes just to mess up there around, try some crazy tactics. Just keep it simple. You have got kings have, your god center control, just defend them, have active pieces, and as you said, anyway, you're gonna get material sooner or later. So why not? So bishop d6, c3, knight c6, and he's going a4. Like again, okay, the pawn is hanging. Not, I mean, it is hanging for the moment. I thought maybe queen f3 is a good idea, like you defend the pawn and make an attack on b5, but he's just going a4. He's just going for the principal pawn breaks in this Sveshnikov setup.
So what's his plan for queen e4 then? Let's just imagine they play queen e4 instead.
Maybe he's just gonna go bishop to d3. But I mean, he could have even captured this, and for this move we have got bishop d3. But I don't know. Maybe he just wanted to activate his rook as well. Honestly speaking, I would defend the pawn because it's a central pawn. But at the same time, the white's position is so good, or the activity of the piece is so good that even if I give a pawn, it's not a big deal because I get a tempo, and then it's just a very easy piece play in general.
Yeah, also that rook h8 is just not included.
Yeah, yeah, the both rooks
You
are
rook,
not usually
rook down effectively.
absolutely correct. And now he's just playing bishop e2. He can go wherever he likes. He goes h5, preventing some ideas.
Well, there's the pawn to
Castle.
get the rook in. I mean, that makes sense. I like what Robert's doing at least. You got to get activity for that rook at some point, and Robert is. One thing you can't criticize Robert for is bad piece activity. I mean, he likes to activate his pieces, even if he sacrificed material on the way.
Yeah, for sure. Until here, Robert is in complete control of the game. But here, as you said, Robert is generating some counterplay because let's say he played knight f5, and here the idea probably is to capture this, and let's say capture this or capture this. There's knight f4 and some tricks on the g2 square. But right now there was a check, and he has to move the king, and it's so bad that he loses queen or gets checkmated there. So he plays rook c8 first. The whole idea is to now capture the d5 and try some f4 because the bishop is protected. And hence he played bishop f3, defending g2 square in advance so that he can capture on d7. If he captures on d5, he goes h4, trying to do some h3 business. And I like this. Like, he's not even caring to play h3 because it's not a real threat. He can just go g3, and probably black is nowhere in the game. And now
Yeah.
it's Robert's turn with 50 minutes on the clock.
So this is pretty dominant for white, correct? I mean,
Yeah, white looks really, really good. But again, I mean, he needs to start grabbing some material or start giving some threat at some point. Okay, so far, very good. I mean, pretty solid. Pretty much in the control of the game. Nice, looking good. But in chess, like, you need to, if you need to win the game, you need some material or some advantage. And Robert has two bishops, so it's not that easy to get things off. Maybe some knight e7 is possible next move here, because takes, and then simply the queen is coming inside with rook support now. So first thing first, probably he needs to defend this idea, maybe queen g5 or some counterplay with knight g5, some threats. Here, this could an interesting idea, I believe. Or he can also do the same with h3, but okay, h3 allows knight e7. So probably queen g5 or knight g5, something like this.
yeah, and we're seeing how good that d5 square can be for white if things go well for them in Sveshnikov.
Yeah.
Black's. This is painful for me a bit too because I'm an evergame Sveshnikov player, but
Mm-hmm.
I like to lean into my theory. I would have played a6.
Uh, and probably, I mean, if white wants to improve this rook as well, this could also be the possibility, like joining this rook in the attack sometime. Some sacrifice, some counter threat, or some deflection, or might be a threat or a tactic going further in this game. But black really needs to activate his pieces. I mean, and the rook especially. Maybe he can try queen g5, rook h6, rook g6. Not, I mean, immediately, but at some point in the game. Once the knight moves, let's say queen g5, and we have got some g6 ideas. If this works out, and if black gets king g7, black would be doing really, really good. And I don't really see a way how to proceed with white after queen g5. Like, okay, we can play something like knight e3, putting some pressure here. But then black just defends, and I don't know how exactly to get the job done here. Maybe some rook c4, rook c5 ideas with queen d6 check coming in.
Yeah, this
Maybe,
does
but
this reminds me of a principle with Svesh. Is like, yeah, that d5 square is weak, but then and a lot of times the d6 pawn is backwards. A lot of times the pawn's already in d6, but it's hard for them to both attack d6 and use the d5 square. They have to pick one or the other. So it's like they kind of have two weaknesses, but it's not really two weaknesses because you can't attack both at the same time. You have to pick one or the other.
and also they're on the same line. So as you said, it's just a one weakness, one serious weakness at one time.
Yeah, if you could somehow pile up against d6 and keep your knight on d5, then it would be kind of annoying. But
Mm-hmm.
luckily, black, but it's kind of like they got to be careful because, and that's why it's such a dynamic opening.
Yeah, and I think Robert is going to think here for a while as he has got options to play queen g5 and some complication with knight g5, and also to play the same with inclusion of h3 or not. So maybe let's just jump to other board where, okay, we have got who are down to 5 minutes on this board. Connor versus Nathan.
Okay, so Connor really pressuring Nathan's clock, and this is games on video right here as well, so you can see the conclusion of this live.
Yeah.
Okay, playing the bishop's opening.
Mm-hmm. And okay, no f4 yet. Black gets d5 first. And we have seen this between Fabi, Caruana, Nakamura as well. Wesley plays this with black with black usually, and it's a good line. Bishop goes back. Usually they capture or play bishop e6, but this is also fine. Going after the bishop. And yes, whenever the bishop gets dangerous, just capture it. Typical idea. And not really a big fan of Desmo. Anything supporting this pawn would have been great in my opinion, or even capturing is also fine. But if you play f6 and allow this, then you get an isolated pawn in the middle of the board for just no reason. Like you have got two bishops to just capture, and maybe just put your bishops like this or like this, and it's I think a good deal for black. But this is not really a good idea because white captures and then you have a permanent weakness, which also blocks your bishop in many lines.
Maybe Nathan wants that F file though at all costs. He loves that rook activity.
Yeah, but I understand. But here I believe it is more important to open up the center as black has got two bishops. Just imagine, you're having two bishops here and both the diagonals open. So, or even you can put bishop on c5 if needed at times, and later the knight joining in. So that would have been the ideal thing. You don't need to open up the king or create some weakness, because once you play f6, I mean, you're fighting for the f file, but that's not the serious case here. I mean, because sooner or later both the players are going to play something like this, and the rooks are going to come in this file. So nothing is going to really happen in the file. Maximum we can do is trade rooks, and probably both sides will be fine with it. But if anyone who gets benefit from it, it's white, I believe, because white is going to have knight on e4, and that would be very, very difficult to kick out later in the game. But if you have pawn on f7, let's say, and knight comes to e4, at some point in the game you can kick it with f5. So it's going to be, I think, very, very solid for white after f5, f5, and knight b3. Okay, he goes rook a5. This is coming out of nowhere, but interesting idea, for sure.
One other reason I could see him being a bit okay with playing f6, even though he's not thinking about the isolated pawn, but he's thinking about, well, I already took bishop b3. He doesn't have a light square bishop, so I'm really weakening this light square diagonal, but he doesn't have a bishop to punish me with, so.
Yeah, and after bishop d6, I mean, he can at least go directly knight e4 or, sorry, directly knight e4 or like this, and we can always capture the bishop to equalize the game. I mean, neutralize the two bishops. Let's put it like this. And that's why I wanted this knight to go here first, so that we don't have something like this coming in and again wasting a move.
Yeah,
anyways, he goes.
There's a principle when you have a bishop pair, or when your opponent has a bishop pair, you want to trade one of those bishops out. A knight for a bishop is great, but even just trading your one bishop for their one bishop reduces the power of their bishop pair. And so then when you do have the bishop pair, you want to try to think prophylactically about, can my opponent force one of these bishops to be traded off? Because it's very easy to just make a lazy move, and then all of a sudden, like, your bishop's getting traded off by force, and you lost your bishop pair advantage.
Yes, absolutely correct. And this is, I think, very, very important principle to be learned. I mean, in simple, if you have two bishops, preserve them, and if you don't have, try to exchange one of them or try to force exchange. And white should be looking for some ways in which you can force trade like this. And if you are black, let's imagine this knight does not exist for the moment, or this is not legal, and then black should just try to maintain the bishop somehow. So queen e1 played, knight d7, knight g3, sounds good. And yes, he listens to us. He's not exchanging bishops. He's going somewhere here. So nice to see this coming.
So what about why was this a mistake for Connor not to take that when he had the chance?
Probably because the bishop is not so good, and it's defending the pawn, or it's behind the pawn. As I said, if the pawn would have been here, the bishop would have been great asset. But right now, I want it's a liability, but for sure it's not an asset. And the knight is pretty good. He can take any time, and if he goes back, then he has to again spin the move, which also blocks the way of queen. So I think it's fine, because after that also you have got h3, and the bishop has to move again. And I think white is doing fine, so no need to rush. And also knight d6 allows black to improve his pawn structure, get some stability, Also open some diagonal for the queen to come from this side. So I think it is fine not to take at the moment because the bishop is not harmful, nor can get, I mean, and nor it could create some serious threats. Maximum it could do is go e7 and go h4. But as long as the pawn remains, I think the bishop is not going to be harmful. Okay, I don't understand queen f2 really. Maybe I thought something like h3 and, improving slowly would have been better idea or choice. Because for such, okay, he wants to go here, but just b6 and queen f8 at some point would just equalize it completely. Okay, he goes back on himself, and it's not a good idea because now we have got some knight f5, bishop f8. Okay, he preserves again, and this is too much defensive play, allowing some counterplay, some serious counterplay, I believe now. If you don't capture, then it's a queen h4 coming in, and we are not far away from seeing some sacrifice, I believe. Bishop c5, d4. Wait a sec. So if you would have gone bishop e3, there's a queen g5 winning the game. Or not really. So bishop e3, what is gonna do? Is it possible to play bishop f5? Yes. Bishop c5. And probably queen g5 is the winning move. So there's no way you can capture this because this comes with a check. So no checkmate there. So you capture this. Now black captures this to win a piece. Because after capture, he takes on c5 and white drops a piece. And for that reason, d4 was played, bishop f5, then queen f5, sacrificing a pawn to create a mating net here. Okay, sounds good to me at least. And bishop d4, king h1, and now this threat is almost impossible to defend because for knight f6 we have got queen e6, queen f7 checkmate, or the typical n7 idea. And if he goes knight f8, then how exactly this is winning? Because I believe here he resigned.
Really?
Yeah. I maybe could have tried this, or maybe we are missing something very, very silly. Queen f7, king h8, and then what's happening next? For me, it's hard to understand for the moment. Do you see something?
No, I was looking at queen f7. I wonder if is knight f7 anything.
I think black is fine. Maybe he just missed this. Because usually we try to do something like this.
Well, he is playing on. He had 10 seconds left.
Maybe he lost on time. We never know. But yeah, for now I don't see any direct win or any win for white. Because black is up a pawn, you can just get the pawn back, but also the bishop is hanging after that. Or maybe the game is going, I don't know what's so the game is finished, right? As per the broadcast.
Yes. Yep.
And we could see the white on e4 and black king on d5 as well. So white has won the game. Okay, so maybe we will leave it to the audience to figure out what really happened, whether black lost on time or missed knight f8. Only Connor or Nathan could tell us what happened there exactly. But there was a difference.
Knight f6 would have lost to queen e6, right?
Yeah.
So maybe he just saw that line or something. I don't know. Thought that was
Possible.
the only way.
Okay, let's maybe jump. This was a nice game, I believe. Okay, ended abruptly. Knight f8 was possible for sure, and that is why I was not sure about this idea, and I was thinking of considering this move here, so that we could do or exploit this weakness on the light squares. Because queen f5, I had seen this coming, and I thought okay, knight f8, and then I could not see something concrete here. But okay, the game has ended like this, and it worked well for Connor. And the only advice I could give to Nathan is try to play fast next time so that you don't have this much time gap, because 1 hour to 5 minutes is a bit too much. You could definitely save time here and there and try to play fast so that you have time when you need it, like to calculate or defend things.
Yeah, sometimes he plays two boards at once, but I don't think he
Mhm.
was doing that tonight.
Yeah. We have got AD down to 12 seconds here. He's down a
That's
piece.
that's his comfort zone though. And then they try to blitz him, and then he comes back in all his games because people start playing his speed. Well, that's something to check. Is Miles still using time even though Eddie's playing on increment? That's a sign of wisdom if he is.
So is it AD playing slow is too common, or Miles playing too fast is common? How can we
No,
put this?
Miles is good with his time use and varied. Eddie is a time trouble addict and misuses his clock to get to increment all the time, but then always plays very well on increment.
Okay, so let's try to see this game from the beginning to understand is it some type of Catalan or some other fianchetto. So knight f6, c4, b6, so some kind of English defense, if I'm not wrong, or just transposing to Queen's Indian.
Oh yeah,
g3, okay, we go.
Miles is the Queen's Indian guy. He plays knight f3 b3, and so he
Okay,
loves he loves Queen's Indian. So he's just gonna play it every game. Not every game, but he also plays e4, e5 main lines and stuff. But for the most part, it's no shock, and you better get some Queen's Indian prep if you're gonna face Miles.
yeah, right. So, oops, knight c3, knight e4. Usually they play castle, castle, and the game goes knight c3, knight e4. But here, white played knight c3 first. Maybe the idea is to just try to include queen c2 and not allow knight e4. And black was alert. He went knight e4. Usually they play d5, and it's like some kind of a queen's gambit with b6, bishop b7 or Tartakova system. But he goes knight e4, making it interesting game. Queen c2. Okay, there are now two kinds of players who loves to take, and some people prefers playing f5. But probably in this position, f5 is not a good idea because there's a knight d2, and it's not the same, which is after castle, you have got knight f1 idea. But so here it's not the same, and hence f5 is not a good idea because knight d2 will make black get a minus position. So he captures bc3, again aiming for e4.
Showing he's well prepared, or
Yeah,
is
and
is Eddie
again,
as well?
two options possible. It depends whether black is playing for what. But black prefers simplicity. So as
Yeah,
white. I'm surprised, like he played queen c2 and he gets two chances to play e4 and he's not doing it.
yeah. I've got a theory on them avoiding the castles line. If they're playing blitz, they just love to get those kings castled quick. But they're sitting here, they're staring at their clocks. They're like, I've got 90 minutes to think here. I
Yeah.
can wait to castle my king. I can calculate a few lines. I think it's still just smarter just to get that king to safety quick, even more so in classical games. But I can see their mindset. They're like, I can play on the edge because I've got the time to calculate.
Yeah, but okay, he played a4. I understand this part. So if he castles, he has got a5. But I don't see anything coming up after a5. And now, okay, generally you should be playing e4, bishop f4, and some kind of a rooks to e1, d1, and trying to get some e5, d5 ideas. Is what usually happens, or if you're a Catalan player, you try to push this h4, h5, and try to create some or generate some attack or some threats against the king. But without that, I don't know where the rook is going from b1. Bishop
Maybe,
f6, bishop a3. Again, okay, you aim
maybe he
for
wants
c5
c4.
ideas, but usually it never happens because, I mean, there are games where c5 has been played at times, or even sacrifice at times. But in general, it's not so great idea. Queen e7, and again, you cannot really do it because takes, and you just capture back with a knight. And black is doing absolutely fine in general. He gets e5 as well.
Yep.
He goes for c5. Maybe not so great timing to go here. He could have castled first, got rook e8.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. Why are you breaking the center when your opponent's fully developed
Yeah,
before you finish your king safety? Like it's just there's no reason to be doing that.
absolutely. But still, I believe, let's say takes, 95, 95, and some tricks here. Okay. So he has to capture on c5 with the knight. And he has got some trick here. Not sure how great it is, but he played bishop c5, queen c5, and knight e5. And probably for bishop here, he has got some knight d7 idea. Not sure if he's holding a piece back because take, he's forced to have gf6. And after f3, the bishop just goes back. Maybe he can. Okay, e4 is also not so great. F3 bishop here and g4, but then h5 is there. So, and probably that's why he played rook b5.
Oh,
But now simply the bishop goes.
this happened in the game.
Yeah, and just the bishop goes back and white is down a piece, and probably it's just game over.
So the strategy paying off for Miles to leave his king in the center the whole opening.
Yeah, it worked out, but I think everything was done by AD here. Like there was just no need to play c5, and even if you play c5, I mean probably now he's down a pawn clearly, so he needs to do something. But at least he would have included rook b5 first. I don't know how exactly to get the job done here, but for sure c5 was wrong.
Yes, and
Uh,
we got some news about Miles, by the way. We're unfortunately going to lose Miles from our club soon here. He's moving to another state. He's going to be playing in Charlotte, I believe.
uh-huh.
So I don't know his exact move date, but it's coming up here soon. So get your last games in with Miles while he's still here. And, I think his parents still live here, so we'll hopefully get him in the club when he comes home to visit. But great having you play in the club, Miles, and awesome watching all your games. So we're going to miss you for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Um, and strategy worked out as you said against AD, and now it is down to 30 seconds on the clock as well as down a piece on the board. So I believe Miles is going to convert this one. Let's jump to the first board then.
Yeah, he's not going to be up a piece. I was wondering if he was going to match, if he was going to play against Eddie's clock at the end there, but I think up a piece, the answer is no.
Yeah, he's taking his time and he wants to
Slowly
convert it
convert that.
properly.
Yep.
So Ethan Hunt versus Tim Jordan.
Yeah, this is Jordan Tim, National Master Jordan Tim. So we're pretty lucky to have him playing this month. He's by far the one seed. Although he did draw with Eddie, or he drew one of his games. What's his?
Yeah.
No, Connor, not Eddie. But he did draw against Eddie in another tournament recently. But
Yeah.
he's rated like close to 2300. He's like 2270 type of player.
Mhm.
So he's basically a class above most of the regular players. And he's every game Joe Bob a London player. As White's huge, fierce attacker. His tactics will knock you out. So that's and you can probably, if you're gonna get him, probably get him with good positional play because that's where probably he's not as strong, but obviously still very strong, being that high rating. So yeah. Anyways, glad to have him playing, and let's see if he's able to beat this other national master, Ethan Hunt, who's a little bit lower rated, but also a very strong player. And Ethan knows his theory extremely well, so he could actually match up okay against Jordan, who I don't think knows that much theory. If he gets something he's really comfortable with.
Yeah. And they are trying to play the main line of the English opening, pretty much theoretical stuff. Both of them are on 2.5 points. Probably whoever wins probably gets the lead. Okay, of course, Miles is going to join them with 3.5 next game if he is going to win probably. So next week it will be an interesting match as well. Oh,
Well,
sorry.
this is the last round, so it's just gonna be. That's the problem with 4 round tournaments. We're gonna have some co-winners, but
Is this the last round? Or we have 5 rounds?
yeah, because it's the number of Thursdays in the month. So
Ah,
since
okay. So the Thursday sign, the month end.
yep,
Is it like this?
yep. So next month it'll be
New tournament. Okay.
it'll be five. Yeah, new tournament, and the July's tournament will be 5 rounds because there's 5 Thursdays.
Ah, interesting. Okay.
So it's just new month, new tournament.
So
Two.
okay. So Miles is one of the champions of this event.
Yeah. So Miles. Yeah, Miles gonna be signing off with a shared win of the Thursday nighter. It looks like.
Yeah.
Although
And let's
those,
see if we
because yeah,
get
what's Connor
someone.
on? Did Connor? Connor's got a win though too. Was he down at 2 or?
Connor was on. Uh, yeah, he lost one. He lost one game to Miles, so he scored
Yep.
2.5.
Yeah. So Miles win over Connor too to get that co-champ. That's always shows it's a very deserved win for the month.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's continue to the reverse dragon or the English, whatever we call it. So takes it is also pretty much tough. And e4 in such positions, okay, he played knight g1 in the game, but it is also a common idea to sacrifice a pawn. And in general, like you get enough compensation. After rook b1, you have got bishop b2 coming in. The pawn is hanging always. Or let's say the queen goes down, you have got check and you capture on a4. You can also simply play queen c2 and the pawn is under attack, like the c7 and e4. And it's not easy for black to develop this bishop as after bishop b2, the g7 hangs. So as this bishop as the b7 hangs. So usually this is the typical idea in this position to sacrifice a pawn and get lots of initiative. Okay, machine-wise, still 0.00 or something like that. But black needs to be very careful in this line because white is giving multiple of threats and next move is just castle. Let's put it like this. But in the game, we saw knight g1 immediately. So probably he didn't want to give a pawn. Bishop f5, queen
I feel like
a4.
I feel like it's even easier to do that as what you're white. You already know you're kind of up a tempo. Uh, it's like what's a pawn for activity when you're ahead in development with the white pieces. But
Absolutely. And here, maybe he just thought maybe the f5 is black is forced to play f5 and then he could go knight h3, knight f4 or just f3. Because after bishop f5, queen f4, the typical move is 25, but then there's a d3 and some problem there. Maybe you can just play bishop g6 or some tactical trick like queen c5 at some point or times. But he just decided to give up pawn, which is definitely not a good idea. And now white is just up a pawn. So it paid off. Knight g1 worked probably. He's up a pawn.
so he knows his opponent. He was gonna play for.
Can he play some kind of bishop b4? What I was wondering is if he goes queen c2 carelessly, we have got some ideas like knight d4 here. And the whole point is we have got this, and you cannot capture this because it's a pin. And if you capture this, there's a queen to a1. But of course, I think, oops, white would just go probably queen d3, and the same will not work now because for queen d4 we have got queen d4. So he decided to go to f6 and simply put queen on e7, putting some pressure here. e3, and probably now next move is castle, and no one can stop white from doing it.
Yeah, and
Okay.
I'm sure if bishop b4 did work, Jordan would have played it.
Yeah, definitely. And here, okay, maybe just h4 is a good idea to just prevent any kind of unnecessary activity from the black side. But why just aiming for e4 here, not caring much about h4? And black goes g5. I mean, this is not good, but I understand why this move is being played. If white gets e4, e5, then first of all, black is down a pawn. Then the bishop will be feeling very, very awkward over there. So I understand his play, but again, not recommended to weaken your king. You could try something like knight e5 and try to fight with c5 like ideas or something. I know it's tough, but you need to generate some play with that or h4 idea, not by weakening your king. That's not really a good way of fighting back. And now we have got additional weaknesses. and probably he would have just taken a pawn there, but maybe he was worried about rook d5, queen h6, and maybe he wasn't sure what's happening next. But I'm pretty sure that e4 is coming next, and white is doing pretty good. But he just wanted to keep it safe. He's like, I'm up a pawn, white to take a risk, just exchange queens, go to the end game and convert. Even rook b5 is coming here. Very nice. h4. Okay, not sure why this is needed. Could have just gone e4, e5 in my opinion. But okay, maybe he wants rook f4. Captures, captures. And now probably rook f4, rook g6. Okay, both of them not interested. Would have been a good addition because after bishop d6 simply could go e5. Knight e5. Okay, I like this, but okay. He just wants probably this or something like this. Okay, guess the rook here, but then d4 is a bit weak. If okay, captures, captures, takes, takes, and some counterplay already. And now if the rook moves, simply bishop g5 is the winning idea probably. He goes there, yeah, bishop g5, and yeah, it's winning for white.
Wow, this is some classy play by Ethan. So looks like he's on his way to upset in the rook endgame.
Still something here for black to play because after b4 there's a rook c4 and you cannot play d5 yet. So this pawn's also gonna roll. So if white is careless or fails to create a pass pawn or a connected pass pawn, black might be having some counterplay. So he's threatening e6 here, and this gives him chance to save the pawn probably. King e7. Oh come on, just b4 was simpler, I believe. Why to give up a pawn? Just play b4, rook c4. You have a d5 and wait a sec. So takes take, and is there a5? Wow, he's not in time. So that doesn't work, and black gets his play. So d5 on the board, rook b3, d6, king to a6, rook coming back to d4, threatening d7 here. King goes back, and now by the time he creates a passer, black will also push his pawn, and g3 is hanging, so he needs to burn some time playing king g2. But instead, he goes f4 directly, giving up this pawn, and after this, I don't think that white is winning anymore.
But what about instead of f4, just playing rook c4?
Yeah, rook c8, and it looks like a draw to me. Or
Well, and Ethan's not drawers, so I mean, I
wait,
think
f5 is there. Okay, let's say you can go like this, and he needs to play f5.
is this the Y position?
Probably. Yes, it's a live position.
Yeah. So I'm still a bit curious if you back up just for a minute to when he gambited the pawn with f4.
I mean, why is he just didn't push the pawn first? Like he could have done like, okay, this is king c3 is coming now, and this is lost for sure. Because now the difference is b5, and he just got e6 here. The point is after take, you don't need to take back, but just push, and you are winning. This is winning for white for sure, but black would have played something like king d7, and probably this also loses after king to d5. a3 we have got a check. Okay, if he captures it's simpler, so let's put it like this. King goes down, or let's just first explain this line, and now probably king c6, you push here, you go d7, but it looks like a draw to me. King here and king here, and it's a draw because black is in time. So probably he was drawing this. He would have played king d7.
So Ethan had the chance to play e6 f6 but didn't, or did it, or what's going on?
I mean, he delayed it. For example, I would have start with f5. And if I start with f5, the idea is immediately to go e6. Like a5 or b5, whatever, it just loses because e6 takes an f6. So forcing him to go here. And now I need to figure out if I can work out this way. Probably not. But okay. So I think so f6 is gonna come at some point, and then we can play takes. Not really, yeah. Okay, so let's put it like this. So a5, king d4, king a4. Uh, he played f5, king to d7. I think is the only move to defend this. And now if we can work out this king c4, b5, king b4, and if he goes back, then e6. But then the problem is after king c4, like move, there is something like f6. And again, it's a draw. Like you have to push and then just hold around here. So maybe it is just draw after takes take, as I thought in the beginning of the game. I mean, beginning of this line. And black just holds. So as I said, like the biggest mistake here was probably giving up the g3 pawn or allowing this counterplay. But it looked winning
Here.
completely here. So bishop g5 looked very natural, capture. And, and surprisingly, there's no way to save this pawn. Maybe that is also fine. You go rook f4. And now you go d5. Okay. Because b4, rook c4 is there. And maybe d5 is also fine. You go here, you play d6, king e6, rook d4 here, and king g2, a5, and like this probably you have to work out, and the threat is f5, e6. Because b5 we have got f5, and if he goes a4, we have got e6. So he needs to play rook e3, and still it's not so clear because after this, there is something. Okay, there's no king c6. There's a b4, rook into pawn b3, and probably this is winning. There's a king c6 though. Maybe you start with king f2 so that you don't lose e5. Yeah, this makes more sense. And for b2, you have got rook b5. So something like this or some more precise or accurate play was needed there. Not giving much chances. Uh, and also, it's not that easy that he has got some. Yeah, probably this is winning. Yeah, rook h rook d5 wins.
See,
It was important to defend this pawn. Yeah.
oh yeah, see that's what I was. So I was wondering instead of f4, what about rook c4?
Even this looks pretty good. But again, maybe I thought we can just play e5 and let's say check. He will just go here. And the problem is we do have connected pawns, but it's not a connected passer.
Yeah, but
So we cannot
what
really
about
push e6.
what's wrong with rook e7 and d7? I guess.
Just rook comes back probably. And the pawn is not winning as of now.
Well, what about
The
what
rook
about
is
what about rook takes pawn and then try to play rook f6 and take b6?
but this hangs. So maybe you can try this out with f4, but again you need to calculate your give some pawns. You also need to calculate a4, and the problem is sometimes even the counterplay could get generated or some perpetual might happen, and also some counterplay. So instead of giving all this counterplay, I think the best way was just to defend the pawn and push it
Yeah, we
because
saw
it's
you.
just one more. Like you have got pawn on the sixth rank and he's still on the second or third. So you're already far ahead. You're just two moves away from queening, and you just need like 1, 2, and 3 to again make the pawn queening. So and if a4 is not happening, he needs to defend this. So I believe this was easier. Maybe there's a rook b4 here, making it a little bit complicated, but takes, and we are again not in square. So maybe just
I
come
feel
back.
like I'm getting a lesson learned from this game. I'm feeling a lot more dangerous about black's a pawn than I was before seeing this game. I guess just because that even that line you showed where the king was outside the box,
Hmm.
when you look like you're protecting your pawn, well they can trade rooks and just rush that pawn. It makes me want to, as I'm getting close to the end game, let's start to get my king towards the queen side to potentially deal with that a pawn.
And we have a result. The game has ended in a draw after. So what has happened in the game? So they played this d5, capture, capture. Probably they just agreed to draw after this point. A4, f5, a3. Okay, wait. He missed d6. Oh, I missed f6. Sorry. e6, f6, and yeah, it's a draw.
Yeah, I'm gonna call Ethan the most peaceful player in the club because he's got really strong skills and he basically outplays people all the time and then ends up drawing the games because I think a little bit. Yeah, I don't know what's maybe just doesn't have that killer edge at the end of the games or just doesn't want to lose. But it's amazing just seeing him outplay so many strong players, including Jordan Tim here. If I'm
Yeah,
remembering the earlier game correctly, it looks like he was pretty much outplaying Jordan most of this game,
true.
and but satisfied with the draw. I'm the same type of player, to be honest. I just hate to lose, but yeah, I feel like if Ethan had a little bit more killer edge in some of the, he would have racked up a ton more wins in some of these games he's drawn because he's really outplaying these players for most of these games.
Definitely, it was an interesting game to watch and a lot to learn from this end game. That how things could go wrong for both the sides. But yeah, it was a fighting game indeed. And we have a news that Miles is the champion of this event probably because only guy with the 3.5, and Tim and Ethan, Jordan and Ethan shares the second place with 3 points, I believe.
Well,
As
congratulations to Miles.
yeah,
So he's leaving his mark on Minnesota before he heads off,
yeah.
saying, "Don't forget about me, guys. I'll be back to beat you up later."
Hmm. Or let's go back to uh, Thomas versus Robert, where things were quite interesting and a lot of things happened after. Sorry, we left it here. Bishop f3, and he did play. Okay, we left it here, and here he played rook d8 to defend knight e7 idea. We were thinking about knight g5 and queen g5, but I don't know why he preferred putting rook in the close file. Maybe he just wanted to ensure that pawn never hangs. And look, this is quite interesting. b6, he's sacrificing a pawn there,
Yeah,
and
that I can't imagine that was Robert's reason. I mean, he doesn't want that pawn to ever hang. Does not sound like does not sound like so in Robert's toolkit. He doesn't care about materials, so
after capture, yes, there's a queen d6. So yeah, pretty well calculated. d5. Wow,
yeah. There's the idea. Okay, we're seeing it now.
very deep. Yeah.
Yeah, there's no way it was just to protect c7. There's something coming.
There's just no way that Babcock Thomas finds it because even we could not find it. Just Robert thinks, wow. And we have sacrifice here from Thomas. It's like, give me that knight. I don't want any counterplay or any f3 or any ideas. Like let's say go something here and you capture and some f3. It's not working, of course. The bishop is hanging, but he just don't want anything like this to come or happen. He just captures on f4 and goes bishop e4, probably queen f3 next, and says, okay, fine, no worries. Okay, come on. He would have captured this also. There's no issue capturing this. It's absolutely fine to capture this here, but he just goes queen f4,
Yeah,
and now
he won't even
the
capture
rook
that
is
now.
activated.
He probably
Yeah,
wants to use Black's pawn as a shield for his king now. Because
we thought that the rook is never coming to the game, but Robert managed it.
well, come on. If you play GH3, isn't the rook still kind of getting active?
Yeah, but at least we can say that, okay, at least we are controlling most of the squares by the rook, and only the square controlled by him is this. But after queen f4, gs2, I mean, the rook is fully active. And this is a pawn. Like, I mean, sometimes it's
Right.
okay to accept sacrifices because although if you don't accept sacrifices, Robert will keep giving, and it would backfire at some point. So I mean, okay, you can make a good strategy not to give him initiative, but you need to accept some material at times because you cannot really win without being materially up. And I don't think anything is remaining after this to be sacrificed. So this was the last sacrifice I believe from him, and should be honored and accepted.
He's running out of pieces to sacrifice.
Yeah, if he's materially up, he has got exchange, and White has got 2 pawns for it. It's fine. Knight g3 and rook h4. Okay, so this rook is looking pretty good. Queen to d3, rook to f4, 94. Okay, come on, can he get c4, c5? Yeah, he gets c4, and definitely not an easy position to play with 2 minutes on the clock, but indeed he's giving some threats here. So now White is threatening 2 ideas, queen a3 check and c5. And Robert has got enough time to figure out how to take this forward. Maybe queen b2 is one idea. But then still c5, and once the bishop gets maybe, and then maybe we'll witness another sacrifice. So what do you think, Chris? Are we gonna witness this sacrifice after c5?
I could definitely see it happening. I feel like Thomas is, yeah, putting on some huge pressure, especially for his time pressure.
Mm-hmm. So how about checking the game between Ran and Myri?
All right, this is Norm versus Ryan.
Yes.
These guys are on camera.
Okay, sounds good. So let's say this from the beginning to understand it better. Wow,
No,
it's
Norm,
it's e3
he's
poison.
he's a Stonewall player, so
Ah, Stonewall. Okay, fine. So he got it what he wanted from the opening. Ah, this is not really good idea because now this gives White license to kill the Black's king after this. So never do this, guys. Never block the center when your opponent is playing a Stonewall. Rule number one. Always keep the possibilities. Play castle, play whatever you like, b6, a5, b8, b5, anything, but do not lock the center because this will give White a complete license to attack your king with whatever way he likes. So do not block the center. b5, a3, and this guy immediately started putting some pressure over here. So knight e5 probably next. Bishop b7, queen f3. Okay, if you're not castling, then maybe it's fine. Let's see how do they play this. And okay, again, like this was not necessary. I mean, you can just go g4, g5. The center is locked, and there's just no need to open up.
yeah,
Just
the
continue
bishop.
g4, g5.
You're making Bishop B7 a lot happier.
Yeah, the bishop has no life here behind the pawn, but suddenly you play e4, and a bad bishop turns out to be a very good bishop suddenly.
Yep.
Maybe would have delayed the capture, but okay, he captures everything and goes 95. Or maybe just castle was better, I believe, because it's better to keep option of going to d5 or f5, depending upon the requirement. And there's just no need to capture this because you could do this anytime,
Yep.
but maybe he just wanted to go into the end game.
You can see that. I think he wanted to simplify. Also, he's just seeing his own ideas. He wants to get. He's like, man, I'm knight d2. It needs to get developed. I need the e4 square. But when you're thinking about piece activity, you want to think about net piece activity for both players. You can't just think about your own pieces. You want to think about what makes my pieces the best while also making theirs the worst.
And of course, if white captures, black is really, really very, very happy. But here, the better move for white was just to try to play some kind of a queen g4, putting some pressure over here. You can castle, try to put bishop on g5, 6, and some ideas. It's not going to be enough, but you could maybe add on some pressure with h4, h5 later on. and be in the game. But if you capture this, then you're definitely helping black for sure. And now it's just a perfect position to play from black. Maybe
Well,
not
I
this.
still don't see
Maybe this
why this isn't
be it.
drawish, but
But white has got a passive play. And black is gonna play this at some point. And that's why I wanted this rook to be here. Like he should have castle first, or even f5 is fine. Like you just allow this and just keep the king here, and everything is in tight. Like the bishop cannot come anywhere, and you can play h5 later, and you are in complete control of the game. If you want, you can try to make double from this side, try to enter like this, or you can go for the traditional b4 break.
knight
But
two
okay,
knight centralized on an untouchable outpost, and
yeah,
pawns all in the same color as your bishop, so that reduces white's bishop activity a lot.
yeah. Or also this other plan could be just play castle, go rook of p8, and try to get b4. But
Yeah,
instead, he messed up the piece placement a bit because now this rook simply gets activated, and you have got something to defend and to be worried about. Look, this happened. Very natural. Takes. And now this rook will, of course, defend this, but not easy to win this pawn. He has got rook f3 there. Ah, this is bad. This is bad. h3 is something which you have played, so that rook b1 can be made with king here. And something like this could be met with rook to f3 or some counterplay like rook a7. And if he goes rook f8 back, okay, just play rook a4 again and off a draw.
nice.
But instead, he played g3. And now this, at some point, the rook will go somewhere and the bishop would get pinned or would be hanging in lines. Also, it creates lots of weaknesses for the king. And now look, we can see already that we cannot play rook f3 because the bishop hangs. No bishop e1, again some pin. Annoying pin rather. So he goes rook a3. h6 is fine. And now he goes rook a7. Is this working? So he has got some checks there. So yes, for the moment, rook f8. And now the rook is coming like this. And as I said, like this will backfire someday because of not having this formation. So if you have this formation after this check, you go here, and after this, you can just go rook f7 and make a draw with perpetual if you are lucky. But in this line, even if you're lucky, you cannot do anything because after rook d2, it will be under pin. And black will strike first. So just it eliminates the idea of rook a7. And now the bishop is struggling here. So rook b1, the idea was king f1, so he goes rook b3. Also, it was next move probably just knight c3 is coming. And black wins a pawn. So probably take, and c3 is also winning on the spot.
Get into another rook
And rook b,
endgame. Everyone's got to know your rook
yeah.
endgames.
But this one is quite sorted, I believe, because the pawn is quite advanced and the h2 also hangs. So you cannot go king g1. We have got c2 rook b1. So we must go up and get another juicer. And I believe it's just a matter of a technique. And yes, the game has ended. Black has won and white has resigned here.
Well played,
So I
everyone.
think a very good game by Shiro Marian.
Yep, Ryan's improving young player. So good to see
Hmm.
him on the weekend. Yeah, it's also the summer now, right? No school. So hopefully seeing a lot of players coming out for Thursdays and maybe Tuesdays.
Yeah. All right. So let's go back to Robert and see what's up there. So okay. So basically, we still cannot predict what's happening in Robert's game. It just okay. I did manage to get one more right,
Oh, there's your prediction.
but but rook d2 no c5 because Thomas is worried about what if he takes and takes back. So he goes rook d2, queen a1, rook d1, and Robert be like, no draw, buddy. I'm gonna fight. He goes queen f5.
Yeah, Thomas, I could definitely see playing for repetition right now. Just, I think his nature is also he's totally cool with the draw in most of his games, and I mean, unless he's totally winning, of course he wants to win. But we've seen Thomas agree to some draws in positions he could push for a win. So much less being in time pressure, I think he'd be okay with the draw.
Y- Yes, like both sides can play for win here, but it's also risky at the times because if this pawn starts rolling, it will be really, really difficult for black to stop it because those are connected pass pawns. The knight is pretty strong, and the only weakness is very well defended. So to parry that, you have to get some kind of f5. Uh, and one of the lines I could see is you cannot really capture like this because there's a queen d6 check coming in. Yes, we do have this. But then again, your king is quite weak that even after this, there's some queen d6 I could see, some queen a6, queen e8 ideas. Or if king goes here, some rook d5 idea. Okay, not rook d5 immediately, but some threats there with queen to e1. But at some point, this would be a thing, or let's say you can start with h3 so that you have a square here to hide. In the game, he played queen g3, attacking the rook. He goes back, bishop b8. Can you play d6 here? So d6, and probably queen will come back, or queen e5 like this. So he goes queen e3. And now for bishop a7, officially he can play c5. But then rook e8. Will he exchange queens? He has got 50 seconds to decide. He goes queen b3. Wow.
Oh, so never mind. So I guess he's maybe not playing for a draw.
Yeah, but I mean, queen c5 is like kind of a safe, I would not say advantage, but a safe try to try to exchange queens because you're low on time. You've got knight d7 coming next. You've got d6 coming next. So you've got some tricks there with active pieces. And more importantly, strategically, Robert won't like it to play without queens. So that would have been a good idea to play with less time on clock. But he keeps reading around, and it's not a. I mean, if Thomas would have got 30 minutes on the clock and Robert 1 minute, then it's a good idea to play queen b3. But with this timings, 30 minutes for Robert and a minute for Thomas, I think it's more riskier for White.
So why can't you take two pieces for the rook?
Yeah, the b8 hangs, so
Okay,
he
got
needs
it.
to play something for bishop e7 or
I'm a bit out of shape here.
bishop somewhere. And then probably he's aiming for some d6. Then for bishop e5 and bishop e7, I don't know what really. Because if you move the knight, then there's a rook e1 coming in. So not really sure how the game is going to proceed after bishop a7.
Yeah, looks scary a bit. Yeah, you can see both sides look scary. I mean, you can see both sides potentially winning this game.
Uh-huh.
Because yeah, those that pressure on f2 is looking pretty scary at this point, and all black's pieces are active.
Uh-huh.
Those pawns are extremely scary though, so it's like everything's working for both sides. Kind of. I mean, I guess white could have a little better piece activity, but
So what do you think? How long is Robert is going to think over here?
you know, he plays super fast, but then when he wants to think, he thinks.
You are absolutely right.
I don't think he's like pressuring the opponent's clock. It's just like he wants to think. You know, which a lot of players that do play pretty fast, I do think they like pressuring the opponent's clock. But I think
Wait, is this
he's just a really fast player, and then sometimes he'll think.
this looks very scary. Rook e1 is dropping in. And for bishop f1, we have got rook g4.
Uh-oh.
And you can not think about even capturing because then there's a queen e1. But probably he's relying on the fact that, oops, sorry, rook e1, bishop f1, rook f1, and just pray that this works somehow. And because the point is he has got queen b8 check. But then he hangs the rook there. And probably he's still not losing because of queen e5 check. So
Yeah, he's also just playing on. He's playing on a minute, so
But f5 is definitely a risky choice. Like he had bishop a7, and then he would have gone f5. Why to keep bishop hanging? I mean, but this definitely allows. And Thomas immediately goes knight g5. He's not even consider knight to g3, knight to d2, or queen to c3, like blocking the diagonal. He just went knight g5 because he believes that he cannot really go here, and he has got some chances as the bishop does not belong. I mean, it's not on the a7 diagonal, f2 diagonal. So, and now Robert is recalculating his lines. Must be calculating rook e1, bishop f1. And the problem is after rook d1, there's a queen b8 check. So if you try once, let's see this once again. Can he do something with the bishop? He needs to improve his bishop for sure. Let's say he plays bishop d6, just saving the bishop. And for knight check, he has got king here. So that looks fine. And here also everything is under control for both the sides, unfortunately. Like black is not threatening much, white is not threatening much. Maybe queen f3 is an idea here. No, sorry, rook g5 hangs, my bad. Can you go knight e6 and c5? Like knight e6, king g8, and something like c5 at some point, and aiming for d6, like trying to open up the diagonal. Like d6, what I'm considering here is rook d1. Now you capture with a check. Again, if he goes here, you have got some checks there. And if he goes this side, you just capture on the d1. He captures back, and you just push. And luckily, you have got f3 to save the day. And he fight is winning.
that would be a dramatic finish.
Yeah. So it is like very, I mean, just one of the lines I thought, I mean, but they need to really calculate well. But I think black is in more danger here, looking at Robert's king safety. Wait, did he play queen e1?
Why would you not play rook e1?
Yeah, because rook e1, oh, come on, that's a brilliant finish. And if king h1, rook f1. Wow, that's brilliant.
Wow, so that's a winning move.
So bishop, but it's not game over it. Surprisingly, bishop f1 we have got. There's a queen f2 check, and there are no checks. Okay, probably mate after rook h4 because triple attack with bishop joining in. I just hope this is not a mate. That also wins probably, but rook h4 is the simplest. Like we just checkmate.
So show again why queen e1 is so much better than rook e1.
Because it forces you to. Because queen e1 gets queen f2, right? That's the difference. This allows you to get queen f2, but the rook cannot capture anything concrete because it allows queen takes b8. So Robert ensures that his king is safe by sacrificing the queen and keeping rook on e8. And I think he deserves a Vivinci award for this.
Wow.
That's pretty.
Yeah, we can see why Robert got very close to master himself, and people are extremely scared of his calculation abilities because he finds moves like this.
That's brilliant. It's just brilliant.
Yeah, and you can't really how do you deal with a move like that with a minute on your clock?
So yeah, so this is what happens. So when you have got time on the clock, you calculate rook d1, you realize that it's not working. And there's a typical rule when we solve puzzles, right? So look for all the possible checks, captures, and threats. So we start with the checks, and we try to just calculate that. You know what happens if I just give this check? Because the problem is he cannot take, and we have got rook of an idea. And then you try to understand the difference, and you realize that okay, after this check, there's no. I mean, this is anyway not a problem. After king h1, you have got queen to f2, and I mean, you do it this way or the other, it's same. And you realize that it's a checkmate, more or less. Maybe this is more precise as we don't allow bishop g2 and the checkmate on the next. and you find it by either method of elimination or with brilliant calculation.
Yeah,
And
remember Robert's brilliant win over Jordan Tim at the Minneapolis Open. So Robert totally capable of brilliancies.
yes, so Robert has won this game officially
And
and
he's
ended the tournament with how many points? Is this his first win?
yeah, apparently, yep. He plays Enterprise and chess, so he'll close it out with brilliancy. And
But I'm
you
pretty
can
sure he's the happiest person today out of all the players playing out there.
yeah, you can see why he's not afraid to sacrifice pieces because it does work out for him a good amount of time, and players are afraid to take pieces against him because they've got some horrible memory like a move like this.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. Oops, sorry. Yeah. So let's go to the game which were not analyzed. So this is a game between uh
Yeah, so
Mike.
they
Yeah.
they wouldn't have been on DG. This is the open section, so they weren't on DGT most of the month, so we can't see their standing
Okay.
history.
And we have got your Karukan between Michelle or Michael. It's
Michael Heinisch, yep.
Michael, sorry. Michael and Jeremy. Uh
Yep. So we got a Carol Con main on our hands here. So
yeah. And
Nubair
Bishop
here plays the
C4.
Carol Con himself, right?
Yeah, and probably I have not witnessed this line yet. So I'm gonna learn something new today with Bishop C. Uh, Usually, okay, 94 is the main line here, and sometimes I have seen people sacrificing a pawn like this, but not really Bishop C4. That's an interesting idea. Knight F6. F3, okay, this is now going into something non-territory. And one typical trap here I would like to tell to the viewers is, you capture, he captures, and you might think that this is a good idea. You are making this pin, and you
Uh-oh.
land into 95.
Checkmate.
Oops, checkmate, game over. And probably this is a
Oh,
trap which Michael has studied.
oh no, my queen.
Yeah, this is a perfect one of my queen. And there's just no difference here. Like, you're just losing a piece. There's no bishop. Okay, you can play bishop e6, but that sounds
Can you also
very
would it
maybe the
is
only move. But
does it also work to play bishop takes f7 first?
yeah, and bishop h5 lands into queen h5. So
Yeah, right here.
you can
Can
also,
you also play bishop f7? Just to,
yes. But you get a pawn in this, and
yeah, it's
uh,
not quite as much material, but maybe
yeah, white
for
is
the
still better,
risk averse.
but not as beautiful as the queen sacrifice line.
Yeah.
So this is just a trap. So you should be aware of this, guys. So play bishop f5. Don't go for queen after you have won a material. Be careful. Just go bishop f5 a6 and develop your bishop make castle to have a safe king. Anyways, it goes this, and many times the idea is to capture here. So once again, uh, black needs to be careful here because rook f5 is a serious threat. He allows that and loses for no doubt. And now you are down a piece with the king in the middle, so it's gonna be 1-0.
So where was the critical mistake in improvement?
Uh, I'll come to it. Let's just finish it first.
Sure.
So queen e5, bishop e3. Yeah, I think it was a clean finish, and he resigned after here.
Yes.
The critical mistake, I believe, was, of course, the main critical mistake is allowing rook f5. You can play bishop g6 at least. Just defend it. Okay, if he captures, you lose bishop, but you get some activity, and this is some serious activity because the bishop and queen are going to land here. And in Karukan, it's not necessary that you always castle short. You can also make a long castle. So this is the critical mistake for sure. Allowing rook f5. You can play anything but not allow rook f5. I mean, you can even play g6, but okay, g6 loses to g4. But whatever happens, you should never allow rook f5, because if you lose f7, then you lose the game. It's pretty common. Apart from that, also there is a line called e3, which can be played. For example, if you don't want to give any attacking possibilities to your opponent, just drop this pawn to e3 and give the pawn back. So this is also a good idea. And we play the same, like bishop f5, e6, like you play in the normal Caro-Kann.
So Michael making some gambits. Gambit play look good. Um,
Yeah.
I also play Gambit against the Caro. I feel like the Caro
Uh-huh.
does get attacked a lot, so I feel like it's you got to be comfortable defending a little bit.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, there are lots of interesting lines against Caro which can be played. But if black knows them, then white, for example, now you play this gambit and black plays e3, and you're like, oh no, now my knight looks bad. Everything, I mean, the piece placement gets disrupted. So, and there's nothing wrong in capturing this also. But in this line, white enjoys playing because he's like, okay, castle, 95, bishop g4, bishop g5, just attack, like Robert like. So if you're
Yeah,
playing Robert, and if you play this, guys, just remember to play e3.
and I don't think Caro is prone to being attacked by like objectively strong attacks, right? It's more just
Mhm.
like there's a lot of different attacking ideas White can try to pull out, and it's kind of like a memory test here, memory test there. If you know the key ideas, e3, you know
Mhm.
queen takes d4 against my favorite line, right? But it looks crazy. I play the tall, and it's like so it's not objectively amazing if you're really well booked up, but it is just a lot to learn because yeah, you're bringing your bishop out early, or maybe you're prone to g4 tempos, your b7 pawns maybe not defended, and yeah, it's just white maybe will try to sack pawns in lots of different lines. So it's like, okay, what do I do against this pawn sack? What do I do against that pawn sack? What do I do when they play h4 g4? Like, it's just a lot of various like ideas White can throw at the wall against Caro, but
Yeah.
none of them they all have good answers. But it's just like get ready to learn a lot of gambits.
Yeah, if you can surprise your opponent, I mean, you can literally win games like this as fast, like in 2025 most, like we saw in this game. And like Michael just won this one-sidedly, like without any fight. But at least this could have been played by Jeremy, and we would have witnessed interesting game, bishop g5 or whatsoever he has planned in this game. Uh, but yes, if you can manage to surprise your opponents in Caro by sacrificing a pawn or playing some unusual lines, and if the player is not a proper Caro-Kann player or a legitimate Caro-Kann player, the games might end quickly like this. So
Yeah,
everything depends upon if you can surprise your opponent or not.
I feel like that's also a strategy too, because how I know you're a true Caro-Kann player and you know all these lines, but I feel like
Yeah,
in general there's a lot of players who play like e5 ultra solid, right, and then
multiple lines. Yeah.
they get annoyed by lower rated players playing for draws against their e5 lines, so then they pick up Caro to play for winning chances against low rated players. So I think a lot of times it is people's second weapon. They'll have e5 or c5 in the arsenal, and then they'll be like, okay, I want to play c6 against lower rateds. Um, so it's hard.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's hard to yeah. But yeah, if you do dedicate and say I'm a Caro-Kann main, then you really can just learn all these lines. I mean, French is the same way. There's a lot of different gambits against French. If you're a true diehard French player, you'll just know all the antidotes to all of them. But you also can get mated fairly quickly in the French if you face a gambit line you don't know much about. Um,
Yeah, that happens a lot in French, especially.
and it can happen in Sicilian, it can happen in E5 as well. But
Yeah.
it's just I just don't. I'm an E4 player, and it's harder. I feel like it's a lot harder to miniature the E5 or C5 than it is C6 or E6 if they go wrong.
Yeah.
But
We have got
openings
one more game. Go on.
openings don't matter that much in chess, though. We see that from Robert's game too, right?
Hmm.
Kind of played a weird Sveshnikov where he got his rook totally trapped off to the side, but still ended up activating all his pieces and ended up with a brilliant sacrifice.
Yeah. So I think this is from the open section. Daryl Bimberg is playing against Drew Johnson. And so white
So
is having significant advantage up a pawn, but again, it could be tricky. There's a knight. And if the, let's see this from the beginning.
wow, we did have some extra DGT at the bottom that we didn't notice. Great.
Yeah, we have got this, get two more games from the open section. One of them has finished. I think Noah has won against Mesh. But let's see the live one first. So knight c3, castle, and d5. Generally, it's not so good for line for white because you get an IQP at the end of the day. Yeah. And then generally, just bishop f5, bishop g4 lines are good. Rook e8, castle, b6. And yeah, I can understand this is from the open section. So black just played this and then maybe thought e5 is not a good idea after castles. Maybe he wants to play e5 with the king in the center, but he realized that it's not so great to open up the center with the bishop on the line. So he just copies his opponent probably. And now again, this was a good idea to get a tempo, but then he follows his plan. Is he getting some material here? Takes, takes, takes. Probably. As after knight d5, there's a queen h4 at least. Knight b5, queen f4 or queen c5, two options. But anyway, whatever you play, there's knight c7. Oops. And there's a tactic here. Let's see if this happened in the game. No, that didn't happen. He goes queen e2 and still the tactics is there, bishop f7. And now the problem is you cannot do this because it's a mate. So you play f4, queen h4, knight c7. Eventually gets the rook, but at the cost of weakening the king. For example, something like knight g4, h3, bishop b2, queen b2, knight e3 could be a problem here. This did happen in the game. x3, and he goes knight e3 directly instead of playing bishop b2 first. So he's going after the bishop. I would have loved to get this bishop. Okay, 93. Takes. And he just goes back, comes back. Wait a sec. Is there any threat of bishop here and queen f7? Yes, probably now. Or maybe like this and 96, something like this. He goes 93, so let's calculate this. So takes, queen e6, king f8, and there is no mate yet. And if I go queen c4, there's a e6. And for queen d4, there's a knight f5, defending g7, queen d7, okay. So black defense, queen e5, queen f6, capture. I would have captured this, but okay. So after all this drama, he gets a pair of bishop. And is this coming? Some rook c7 is there, and yeah, so white is winning probably there. So he goes h5. And he gets a piece.
Oh, nice tactic.
So,
Nice tactics from Daryl there.
yeah. And he exchanges the rook because if he pushes the pawns, then he drops them. So no option but to play rook d7. Capture, and yeah, this is close to winning.
And Daryl,
even possible to go like that.
Daryl's gained several hundred points in the last few months. He's one of Dane's students, and I know that he's following Dane's advice, which includes solving puzzles books by writing out all the moves. So can definitely see his tactics on display there. Seeing a nice little two mover.
Yeah, so now double attack, and this is what I was worried about. So when you are playing against a knight, you need to be really careful about this, folks, and tactical possibilities. So, and here the problem was, I mean, if he plays a4, anyway, he loses a pawn, and if he doesn't push the pawn, then nc1 is coming, and it's not easy to clear a passed pawn. Maybe king to s6 was needed here, and the idea is to go king h7, like knight c1. Maybe it's a bit too much, but you need to do this to win this. Knight a2, and then you play f5. The whole point is you need to get g5, g6.
Wow, love that
Maybe this was
concept.
the only way to win.
Got to make the super highway with your king. Just you're playing for in end games. Yeah, I don't think about this in myself nearly enough, but pass pawns are king. You just don't care about material as much as getting that pawn to the queen square. So you need to figure out and we see that in Ethan's game too, right? With f6 ideas, that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Right? Don't just think it's not like early middle game, late. You don't just do autopilot recaptures. You care about, and we also see that one game with the pawn, the a pawn being scary, right? We see several games tonight where, you know, who cares what the material is? Get that pawn to the end of the board. So if you start internalizing that in your own mind, you're gonna find some of these ideas like Nubair can find.
Yeah. So that's all, guys. You need to identify the leader of the game, like the which pawn is going to be the queen, and accordingly get your king in front of the pawn, somehow make your way. For example, here if you play f5 first, then you don't really win because after g5 there's a king g8, and you cannot get this king out of g8 square. So you need to first get king to h7, making sure that you control the queening square, and then just start pushing it out. Like, and if you play something like king g8, then okay, then you win this pawn, and okay, you can even make this pawn queen. So it's very important that you go towards, you control the queening square. That's the key thing. And we saw in the game he played h3, and after that b5 happened, and the moment white went here, there's nc5, and now b4 is not possible because knight e6. Maybe it can still work out the king h6 idea, but I'm not sure if that's winning because knight takes b3. Let's say you have to play king h7, and knight is just coming back in time. So yeah, now white is not winning anymore for sure. Let's go to the live position, which is bishop b8. He found a way to get a pawn or keep attack on the pawn. Can I play? Okay, when knight e6, king h6, a6. So this was a bit premature. He would have just gone a6 or even a5 in my opinion, but a6 is also fine because I want to have this weakness on the board. For example, let's say I go knight e6, you go here, and I try to go knight e4, not giving f5 easily, and at the same time keeping some attack here. Again, like if you play bishop e5, and the same idea will probably work, but I can play something like knight f3 and hang around there somehow. Try to hang around, like not giving him easily this f5 break.
I want to make one more point on the king h7 plan earlier. You don't have to change the position at all, but
Mm-hmm.
that white's up a pawn here. I feel like you think to yourself, I'm up a pawn. I don't want to allow any counterplay whatsoever. I just want to suppress all counterplay and win with my extra pawn, and that's how. But that's just not how it goes. You at some point need to take some risks and convert your advantage to another advantage to finish the game off. So you gotta be looking for, because I can see not even looking for that line because you're like, well, that's just too risky. I don't. Why I'm up a pawn. I don't need to take any risks. But you got to just calculate all those lines and eventually go for some double-edged play to finish games off.
Yeah, so basically there are 2-3 ways of converting the advantage or getting the job done. So either you should have like a big material advantage, like 2-3 pawns up, and doesn't matter, and then you can convert in multiple ways. Or you should have complete dominance. For example, the same position, if you get king to d5, doesn't matter. Like I mean, basically you're not giving any counterplay to the opponent. You're just going and controlling the both side of the board. And third is the way of calculation or something like this, dynamics, or as you said, transferring the advantage from one form to another. So we are transferring the material advantage or upper pawn advantage to the passed pawn or dynamic advantage, so we can do the positional transformation part,
Yeah.
or we can maybe play psychologically if that counts.
Yeah, and if you well, and of course, if you can do the one sided, like suppress all counterplay, of course do it. But we just see even in Ethan's game, right? With it just feels a lot nicer to keep your connected pass pawns rather than split them and go for some F6 idea. It feels a lot nicer to not go for these dynamics, but we're playing opponents that are just as strong as us for the most part because the tournament's pretty well paired. So it's just yeah, if you can suppress all the counterplay, do it. I'm not saying don't do that, but you got to at least be looking for the double edged play even when you have a material advantage because that's how you can get wins over stronger or equally strong players.
Yeah. And one more thing is, let's say talking only about the end game, you can use the principle of two weaknesses. So if you keep your opponent tied down to two different weaknesses on two different sides of the board, then also it could be a easy win. But in this case, there was only one weakness or one pass pawn, and uh, White just kept on moving pieces wherever he thought there's some threat or some chances without calculating much or without a clear plan. And we could see he just played F5 here, dropping a pawn to double attack. And now White needs to be careful. Like if he's not careful, like even he might lose these pawns and lose a game. It's a draw, I know, of course, but the way the game is going, anything could happen. For example, 95, this is coming, this check is possible, or just king e6 is possible here. And this could be risky as now this bishop will be treated as a bad bishop as the pawns are fixed in the dark squares. This is the live position.
Perfect. We're getting close to the end, so should we? Let's maybe go through Mitch's game, and we can jump back to
Sure,
this.
sure. So we have got Mish playing here with No, and it was a queen pawn game with Queen's Gambit and kind of a Kalsipa structure if he captures. Knight f6, bishop g5, castle e3, knight 6.
Yeah, Mitch.
Ah,
Mitch was at your training camp, but it looks like he's not ready to utilize your Carlsbad ideas.
yeah, I mean, it's just simple. Kasparov always played cd5 in this kind of positions. I mean, after an f6 or whenever he gets chance.
Yeah,
Just keep
Mitch.
it simple, get
Sh-
everything under control.
Gotta just go for the minority attack, Mitch, and this probably would have been easy
Yeah,
mode.
okay, he goes for this. And the typical idea is also, I think I discussed in the camp, was the moment your opponent plays b6, just capture on d5. Because after the bishop comes here, that he will capture with the bishop or something like that. And after this, the bishop is going to remain bad behind the pawn. And if he develops here, then the b6 looks a bit unnecessary. Okay, so bishop b7 played. He did capture and played b4, so okay, he's following some ideas. Not ready to push immediately. Can start with queen b3 first.
We spoke too soon.
And for the first time, he has got a good position to play on or something like that. And he plays e4. Like his opponent has got two bishops, and this is the main reason, Mish, you all lost this game. Until this point, what are the mistakes you made are called inaccuracy or permissible mistakes or errors. But e4 is something which you should never do when your opponent is having two bishops.
Because it opens the position, opens the center, makes the bishops a lot more powerful.
Yeah. But okay, somehow he also got out of this, but okay, at the end of the day, the opponent will be having outside passes, and that's gonna hurt at some point in the game. So yeah, now he's into this end game, which is worse. He has to defend the weaknesses. The knights are not doing much. Goes back. Rook comes in, attacks the weakness. Defense for the moment, but then again the second rook will join in. And that's gonna create problems. Now bishop h3 is being threatened. So he has to push. Now we'll attack the second weakness. Again some threats. And hard to defend. or almost impossible. Maybe okay. So this he has got some tactical idea here, but he drops the pawn. Now some chances because of bad pawn structure, but again, these pawns are not going to be the leader of the game. It's going to be these pawns. So unless and until he gets something against this, or he finds some critical, some very strong way to stop this pawn, then only he can make a draw. Otherwise, it's gonna be an easy game or win for black. Yeah, and now it's gone because now a4 is a clear target. He cannot really improve, and now simply the king will come in. But it's straightforward, easy win. Just b5 next. Come on. Why to give a chance? I mean, he could have just maintained 2 pawns, and for this we have got rook c4. And next is quite simple. You just go b4 and king b5, or just push the pawn. Doesn't matter. But instead, he played rook d4, allowing this some counterplay, and probably this now white has some chances to draw, but he goes king d6, makes sense. But it's a rook pawn now. I think this is a draw. If he just brings the king, how did he lose this? Just activate the rook, get rook behind the pass pawn. Is the key to this position.
Okay.
Or just go rook e2, whatever, and you make a draw. Instead, he went passive.
Rook activity at all costs in rook end games.
Yeah, he just kept on playing passively, and that's why he lost. Now everything is dropping. This is not going to help. This is just game over.
Yeah, I've heard that's
Like,
the number one principle in rook end games. Just always keep an active rook. So instead of defending, it didn't really apply exactly to this position. I mean, the active rook principle does, but instead of defending your own pawn, attack your opponent's pawn, right? You know,
absolutely correct.
Keep that rook ultra active. Just keep making your own threats. Do not go passive in rook end games. Going passive is the start of the end.
Yeah, it's really important. Even you can try to play something like a5, b5, a6 to just not allow him any kind of, because once the king gets here, it's game over. Like, I know white is losing, but you need to try some counterplay ideas like a5, b5. You go here, try to attack, and then you try to win something in check if you could. But here, actually, when b5 was just game over, black literally helped by playing this. And now white is like very good drawing chance. Just go rook d1, rook d7, rook d8. Like, you're threatening to win a pawn here or 2 pawns here. And many times you can even sacrifice your rook for the pawn and create a counterplay with the remaining pawns. It was a simple draw if you could have played rook to d1 here. Because in the end game you don't need to place the rook in front of the pawn, but behind the passed pawn.
And again, I know these rook endgame principles are a little bit above the level of these players as well, but always got to start somewhere. And yeah, my rook end games myself are not that strong, so it's something you'll always be improving throughout your chess career. And then when you get up to Nubairshah's level, that's where those rook end games are really how you convert your full points.
Yeah. If you are good at rook end games, you will always score half point extra in every tournament. So it's really important to study rook end games. Many times you save the losing games, many times you win the drawn games. And that's why it's important. Okay, coming back to the game between Daryl and Drew, which is not updating, which means it has ended in a draw probably.
All right. Well, I think, pretty well played by both players. Daryl showing some nice tactics to get ahead in the game, but Drew just showing the resilience of players in classical games. They're never going to give up. They're going to keep playing for counterplay until the end of the game, and he waited for Daryl to make a mistake, which he did, and he forked those pawns, got his pawn right back, and game ended in a draw, even slightly better for Drew. But both players showing some good classical tournament chess, where never give up attitude and look for those tactics on both sides. And hey, we all miss things, so draw is probably a fair result there.
Absolutely. So I think we did also a recap more or less. And shout out to Miles for winning the tournament with 3.5 out of 4. And probably the best game of today or the tournament as far as I've seen, it's probably the Roberts game,
All right.
which ended with a beautiful Queen sacrifice.
Nice job, Robert. Wow. Yeah, Robert just getting those gems. So,
Yeah,
who cares what your rating is if you're getting brilliancies all the time?
yeah,
Well, great. So, let me make a couple announcements and then we'll end the stream here. So, first one I just want to repeat is, we got awesome new tournament here organized by Nathan. So Tuesdays we were not having a tournament, but we did decided to resume. So we're gonna have the Tuesday nighters. So this should definitely appeal to everyone who's a fan of the Thursday nighter because it's a very similar format. It's just a separate tournament, so it's nothing to do. It's not related to the Thursday nighter, but it's same number of rounds per month as there are Tuesdays. So, and the only big difference is it's 60 plus 30 instead of 90 plus 30. So get done with those games an hour earlier, and potentially get home, get to sleep on Tuesday night a little bit earlier than Thursdays. But if anyone has interest in playing that, you do get a $10 discount if you play in both the Tuesday and Thursday night event. If you're really down for classical chess all week, and yeah, hopefully we'll see some players playing in that tournament. Definitely want to show support for Nathan's new event. Always hard to kind of get a new event off the ground, so hope to see some players checking out the new Tuesday event. And then let's
yeah.
also,
Guys, do join in if you like to have a slightly shorter time control. It's going to be 60-30 and very much pretty same as the Thursday nighter.
yeah, we're gonna talk to Nathan about. I'm not sure if we're gonna have DDT boards set up on Tuesdays, but if we are, we can potentially look into either broadcasting or doing recaps of those games as well, potentially. So more news to come from there. I'm sure we'll make announcements on future weeks.
Hmm.
And let's make a quick plug for chessgoals.com. So simple chess courses for non-grandmasters, learn complete repertoires in under 100 lines. This is a nice company founded by National Master Matt Jensen, who's going to be running the Rochester Open here soon, or heavily involved with that. So yeah, opening courses that are really just targeted more towards club players, not huge memory and time investments compared to, say, intensive chessboard courses. But let's get you actually seeing all the lines that you'll face most often. So very practical repertoires, as well as other courses on non-opening topics. So really learning from Matt's entire chess career. So check it out, and if you do decide to purchase any courses, please use coupon code Castle to save 30%. And final
Yep.
announcement before we sign off here is we are lucky enough to have Nubair back next week. So we're gonna have Nubair on Thursday alongside Michael, and so definitely tune in next week for round one of July's tournament. And again, congratulations to Mike Miles on taking down the June edition of the Thursday Nighter.
Yeah.
Any final parting words from you, Nubair?
Yeah, I'm pretty much impressed with the Roberts game today. And yes, I think today, I think all the games were more or less interesting, except one game where the game ended in 20 moves. So pretty much fighting chess in the final round, which is very interesting to see, and no really any draws. And the only draw we witnessed probably was in the open section, but that too went till the end game. So really great to see fighting chess on all the boards. I think which is really important to keep you motivated. So hats off to all the players for fighting it out until the end. And yes, congratulations to Miles for a fine finish and winning a score with the winning with 3.5 ahead of by lead of half point. Looking forward to the next Thursday.
All right. Thank you, guys. We'll see you next week.